The story I'm about to tell you, we believe is of national importance, and where it's headed will reset the country's democracy, and it's going to deconstruct the political, judicial, and law enforcement system in Massachusetts and rebuild it from the feet up, from where it started, all the way back to Sam Adams. And the story, the narrative, and the characters that are involved in what I'm about to tell you go all the way to the world order. And what has happened to me and the information I possess and I'm about to tell you will make sure for the next 100 years the United States will remain the superpower and will keep a hold on the world stabilization of a democratic effort to keep us from World War III. That is a big speech I gave you for some good old corruption back in Massachusetts that's been happening since they dumped the tea in the harbor. And the individuals involved in this were involved in dumping the tea in the harbor and all the way up through the bloodline of corruption that really took a stronghold in the earliest 19th century in the Boston political scene that put many of presidents in the White House. The story I'm about to tell you and what I have been victimized of runs back to Biden and who Biden actually works for. And I live across the street in Nantucket from the most evil man on the face of this earth that takes his orders from a higher order. Now, I haven't told you any names, but that's what I'm setting up. So that's the big picture of what the story is and what the end game will be. And I have the keys to make sure that the entire country's population realize how ridiculously corrupt the system is and how they have been duped for 100 years. And I have a meme. It's an action comedy, crime thriller. I would think the movie The Social Network meets Goonies, meets The Godfather, meets The Bronx Tale, and it involves Elon Musk and Paul Singer from Elliott Management to Larry Edelson in Oracle. And the reason why the director of the Boston office of the FBI has resigned, the reason why Rachel Rollins was removed, and the reason why there's an absolute anarchy going on in Massachusetts in the political, we'll just call it the kleptocratic system, is the same reason and the same victimization of, Trump. And I'm not putting my political position out there, but what you're going to hear is the utmost, most prolific weaponization of a political, judicial, law enforcement system in the history of our country, and their attempts to derail $100 billion digital infrastructure project in the state of Connecticut that involves the Chinese, the Bidens, the Bulgers, the Kerrys, the Clintons, and the Obamas. And my uncovering of my nemesis and them attempting to remove me as CEO of the next, I will say, Facebook or AWS or Oracle. And have you seen the movie The Social Network, which is the story of Facebook?
I saw it several years ago. I can't say that I
So we know the story. So Zuckerberg and the movie revolves around a lawsuit, and we find attorneys for us played off in that movie, along with in the movie Spotlight. Eric McLish was the gentleman that prosecuted the Roman Catholic Church clergy abuse scandal for Greenberg Traurig. He's part of this narrative as well. And in that movie, Zuckerberg is basically a victim of a lawsuit in the early stages of Facebook, where the Winkleklosses, which are the twins from Harvard, alleged that they were the investors and the original financiers of Facebook, and their attempt to take control of Facebook. In my narrative, I am not a social media expert, but I am a data infrastructure, cybersecurity expert, real estate developer. I am the victim, and my Winklevoss twins are not, Harvard grads. It is the Spitalny family from upstate New York, married into the Abruzzes and the Meyer Lansky of the upstate New York crime syndicate, meets the most notorious loan shark in Massachusetts, who was partners with the Winter Hill gang, Raymond Green, interesting name, and then the kleptocratic political puppet master, Thomas O'Neill, who his father was the former Speaker of the House, Tiny Tip O'Neill, and was on the Kennedy administration and everywhere in between. And a group of early stage investors, which are the Raymond Green loan shark and the Spitalny family, attempting to loan to own or underfund the company Gotspace Data in order to take control of it through a sophisticated loan to own scheme to put me out on the street, remove me from the CEO, and pay them upwards of $100 million on a 20x return on a $5 million loan or investment, when they agreed to give me $12.5 million and left me at the closing table to scrounge up the next $7 million, and kept me on my heels through the founding of this company. So I'm going to tell you the story of, and this is an abridged story. There's many offshoots. There's many things here. But I'm going to tell you an abridged story of how the company was founded, what it controls, and how important it is in keeping control of the stability of our globe and preventing anarchy across the entire planet. In late 2020, I founded a company called Gotspace Data. Gotspace Data was set to develop, and we create the New England Data Corridor. It's all the land between New York and Boston in the state of Connecticut on the interstate, in the towns that control their own municipal power, at the cloverleafs in the industrial parks that span 2,000 acres, that will yield a 12 million square foot, 30 data center, 5 campus infrastructure that will secure the data, information, defense, the government, and all other streaming for the next 100 years of our country, including the relocation of Wall Street to our campus in Wallingford, Connecticut, including building out the new Pentagon in Groton with the government, and taking all the disaster storage recovery to protect our national archives in the towns of Basra and Griswold in a $100 billion, 5 times the size of Silicon Valley, 10 times the size of Loudoun County, Virginia, where our data hub is now, and ensuring that we will have protected and isolated data security, partnering with the federal government, Inquitel, and the Department of Defense, and the trusted government, non-corrupted geopolitical defense guys. And we now find ourselves, after the funding of the company, I circulated an investment deck for $12.5 million to the gentlemen I explained, Raymond Green and the Spitalny family. They agreed to participate in the funding and agreed to put up the $12.5 million. They left me at the table to scrounge for the balance of the capital, defaulted on their investment, and then used that as leverage to attempt 100 extortion plots to get me to step down as CEO and give up control to them. and we'll say who them is they formed a company with my former attorneys in the company, my former consultants and partners, and they formed a company called NE Edge 12 months later, and they went back to the same landowners, the same mayors, the governor, and attempted to undermine the forward path of the company. What we're able to provide is, on the eve of the bill in the House and Senate, after I invested about $7.5 million in 90 days, tied up all the land, and got all of our political allies, I was represented by the former Attorney General of the state, George Jepsen, who had just left office, who lives across the street from our wonderful governor, Ned Lamont. And I work with Ned Lamont. I work with George Jepsen, and I work with David Lehman, the former director of Goldman Sachs, who was also in the movie The Big Short. He wrote the white paper that gave us our Great Depression. And we crafted the most aggressive data tax or tax incentive bill since the New Deal. And we were able to put down this package that afforded any big top data 10 companies, so that's a Fortune 10 in big data, the ability to operate data centers, transact financials, manufacture semiconductors, Teslas, laptops, and store our data and protect it at the best, most interconnected place on earth. Connecticut sits between the two places that have afforded us to keep control of the world. New York in the financials on Wall Street, Connecticut ensuring what the financials did in the backyard of the billionaires that controlled Wall Street, up to Boston with the medical, education, and tech, and the forward thinking of supercompute, AI, and edge out of the universities. And if you were going to build a Silicon Valley today, or you were going to recreate Loudoun County, Connecticut is the most connected piece of dirt on the earth that provides the fastest latency in the world in order to keep Wall Street, which is just speed and controlling of information, is why we are the superpower, as we're able to transact into the milliseconds in front of any trade on earth. And the relocation of Wall Street to the Wallingford campus, the dirt itself and the infrastructure that already exists between the north and south and east and west poles make Connecticut, in the fiber superhighway that interconnects our entire world, the most valuable piece of dirt on earth to control how the earth works. And what controls the earth is information, and the control of that and the speed of which you get it. This project, as a developer, says Paul Singer at Elliott Management, who attempted to take control of the company in a hostile takeover in the fall of 2021, working with my enemies, said it would make him a trillionaire and he would become the richest man in the world's history, and he would finally earn the respect down in Palm Beach he deserves if, in fact, he got control of it. He thought in the first 36 months he would make $1 billion controlling the spigot of turning off and on the world's capital that would need to be invested to build out the infrastructure. $1 billion just to control the placement of capital, just to be the bank or the market maker. He felt it would make him $30 billion the day that we cut the ribbon and we opened the first campus. And by the time it was done and we became part of an AWS or an Oracle super data campus, he would be worth $100 billion the day the first rent check showed up, and it would go on from there. And where we are currently in the narrative is through the never before in history of Connecticut, did we receive the supermajority of the House and Senate that they approved this bipartisan bill. And I was able in less than 90 days to get the most aggressive tax incentive bill in the history minted, along with being in 3 to 5 town hall meetings and select board and zoning meetings during the height of COVID every night. I was able to get fully licensed, permitted ability to operate this 12 million square feet of data centers in these towns on the interstate in Connecticut. It would be the equivalent of getting 10 times the casino licenses of Las Vegas Boulevard. And I was Bugsy Siegel for a moment, but they haven't killed me yet. And we now control the next 100 years of the world's stabilization, making the America the one that controls it. We now go into the victimization. So now you know the opportunity. You now know Bulger himself, Billy Bulger, and the CCP, when they brought over the Burisma money and the Thornton Fairmont money, that money ended up in this deal before I arrived, and I never knew it was in there. When they attempted and failed in 2018 to 2020 to build the data quarter on the land between Mohegan Sun and Foxwoods Casino, and they failed at their project, I come onto the scene, and I didn't realize at the end of the day that I was the guy that would finish it, and I would end up like Bugsy Siegel, and they were going to come back to kill me to take back over Vegas. But it was the digital infrastructure quarter that I turned a lousy 32 megawatt data center into the largest infrastructure project in the history of in the world. And I made that happen. I have so much content. I have hundreds of hours of my adversaries calling me up, threatening to kill me, telling me to step down. What will happen to me if I don't do this? The cops are outside. The FBI's coming for you. I have recordings of corrupted FBI trying to extort me. Everything I'm telling you, this is, and I have a website. I don't know if Mr. Madden told you. I have a website, but I'm also that it explains everything in explicit detail. I'm also the victim of the Pegasus NSO Israeli spyware technology that the Boston police and the FBI deployed on me unlawfully without warrants. And I have Gus Demetrius, who was the data forensics expert that did the Hunter Biden laptop cyber forensics, that has affirmed that the technology on my electronic devices is the same technology that was found on the Dominion voting machines, created by the Chinese, and all my data was being, in every phone call I was on, and you could name it, was being sent back to the ByteDance servers in the communist China. And they were they knew my legal moves before I would show up in court. They knew my whereabouts and my flight patterns before I got there. And I have evaded 30 different attempts in large-scale hotels by way of multiple ruses to take me into custody unlawfully, that I act like Frank Hanratty in Catch Me If You Can, and I slip out 24 times, hiding in plain sight, to being chased down the hall, out of courthouses with SWAT teams, preventing me to get to a microphone to tell my story for 2 years. Everything I'm telling you is so outrageous. I cannot lie. I will not lie to tell the truth, and I do not have to lie. And I have proof of all of it. I'll give one little example, just a sensational piece. Everything I'm telling you is on my website. I have 60,000 downloads. I launched it 4 months ago. Got Truth on Secret Courts. Got Truth on secretcourts.com. And I'm going to give you a hybrid version, and they do this consistently. They did it yesterday, of a bait and switch trap to unlawfully arrest me for crimes I did not commit. I take you to on June 6th, 2022, to be related to January 6th, the same date, June, it's confusing. I am a victim of Operation Schoolhouse. And what it is was a scheme set up by Judge Krupt, which is the former attorney of Whitey Bulger, the U.S. attorney Rachel Rollins, who has now been resigned over this, and George Soros, Thomas O'Neill, and Brian Alberts, Boston tactical cop who solves the Boston Strangler murder, who didn't. It was a ruse to give him credibility in the marketplace, and star of Boston's Finest, who now has resigned, who is the subject of a grand jury public corruption scheme of the murder of Officer John O'Keefe and the framing of Karen Reed. That is national news now. That just broke out on the national level. One blogger who I'm friends with, they just arrested him for allegedly intimidating witnesses and basically spotlighting everything I'm telling you. They took him into custody. They raided his house yesterday in Massachusetts, and they perp walked him to then he came out on 6 o'clock news, and he's now trending on every major news outlet, network, court TV, and you can name it. Turtle Boy is involved in this narrative, and he's a blogger that exposed the corruption I am talking to you about and bringing you back to Operation Schoolhouse. At 10 a.m. on June 6th, my wife was forced into a deposition under being sued for civil contempt for not appearing at a deposition, because the day that she was supposed to appear at a deposition, this crew was attempting to foreclose on my house on an unlawful auction. The night before, they wanted $100 million from me, and they wanted me to step down as CEO. And if I did not step down as CEO and agree to pay them $100 million, the next morning, my house would have been auctioned off. My wife would have been deposed and held in contempt and arrested if she did not show up. I said yes on, let's say, May 11th. The next morning, they double-crossed me. They attempted to have the auction anyways. And then a few weeks later, I'm in this deposition. They intimidated my attorney. They threatened him. And my attorney left my wife and I in the deposition. And here's what happens next. At 10 o'clock, we arrive at the law office of Jesmer Updegrove. Jesmer Updegrove is owned by Lee Jesmer. And the judge that sent us there's husband is the CEO of Thermo Fisher and makes $22 million a year, so that the Massachusetts State Police that now runs the Whitey Bulger rackets can distribute the, unlicensed habituates. I'm getting off track, but that's what's going on. Okay. 10 o'clock, we arrive at the law offices on the third floor at 40 Broad Street. At 10:19, my wife has been threatened so much with jail if she does not answer questions, and we're being alleged that I'm Bernie and Judith Madoff. I don't know their names. My wife is 48. She looks like she's 30. She is beautiful as Melania Trump's meet Megan Fox. She's a 6-foot-tall brunette supermodel, and she goes into a stroke and convulses on the floor at 10:19. And as I'm obtaining, this is recorded. You can hear the screams. This is everything I'm telling you is 100% proven, recorded, and you have evidence. And as I'm attending to her and trying to revive her at 10:19, on my knees, screaming to call 911, the attorney comes around the table and attacks and assaults and batters me and my wife while she's in and out of consciousness, and then runs out of the boardroom. And 3 minutes later, there are 14 Boston police, SWAT, and ATF tactical people in the law office, leaving my wife suffering from stroke on the floor, unconscious, me locked in the boardroom as they interview the attorney who claims he was attacked. It wasn't until 40 minutes later that they provided only after attempting to interview my wife in and out of consciousness, an ambulance, that we end up in the ICU for 4.5 days at MGH in the cardiac arrest unit. They register her heartbeat between 180 and 280 beats per minute. That when she arrived at the hospital that had been going on in and out of mini strokes for an hour at the hands of Brian Albert, who is the gentleman that is now resigned, that was the director of the Tactical Fugitive Task Force of Boston, and the Boston police. That turned into, the next day and over the next couple days, my pressing charges and my wife against the attorney for the attack, and them threatening, the Boston police, the FBI, threatening that I would be charged, but if I dismiss my case and my charges against the attorney, that it would be a non-incident, only to then arrive at home in Harwichport, Massachusetts, living across from Thomas O'Neill, living across from the McLaughlin brothers from Charlestown, living behind the colonel of the Massachusetts State Police, and 2 doors down from George Soros' brother's house in Harwich. I ended up moving into the belly of the beast that controls the world 3.5 years ago. I didn't know where I ended up. That the Boston police end up charging myself for an assault and battery on the attorney. Michael Powers, the detective of the Boston police, Brian Alberts are the moving party. The clerk of courts, Stephen Powers, is the clerk that signs the complaint. And then Joseph Powers is the town manager in Harwichport, Massachusetts.
You're breaking up. You're breaking
I'm sorry.
up, Nicholas.
I'm sorry. That we find out that it was a frame job. They attempted to then get me to step down from the company again. $100 million, you're being threatened with your life. We won't lock you up. Sign here. To I go to a secret show cause hearing, which is the one that upended the Catholic Church, if you might, or Jerry Remy, how the son killed the girl because Jerry Remy kept putting his son into the Boston Municipal Court, which is the secret court, the only one in the country, that we go into a hearing that I was lucky enough to have a recording of, and the attorney admits attacking me, that he attacked me and he assaulted me and my wife. He was so distraught. These are glitches in the way the system works. I have people that have harmed me admit under oath and on recorded lines every crime I've committed them for, or they committed against me, in a glitch of the world order, where this attorney admits, I attacked Nick and his wife. I assaulted him. I went around the table and beat him up. He says this I'm paraphrasing. He says this on the record. The clerk, magistrate, charges me for an assault and does not charge the attorney who admitted on the record he's the one that attacked me and I didn't touch him. Do you understand what happened? That's called the secret court. That's the way they were able to rob the Catholic Church, the parishioners, and abuse children by the scandal that went on for over 100 years in Boston, as long as the Catholic Church kept providing capital to the dirty cops and politicians they used to put the Democrats in the White House, is the same secret court that attempted to convict me, that couldn't. That fast forward, I go to December 22nd, 2022, another Newsbreak article. During that time, I had multiple lawsuits I mentioned earlier that were against me. Judge Michaud was a judge that gave me the only fair ruling in court I've ever had in Massachusetts, and he throws out the loan shark Raymond Green's case to foreclose on my house. The Thomas O'Neill and George Soros went after the judge, launched a judicial complaint against him on December 22nd, 2022, and put him on the cover of every major publication in the country, and he became a meme for the only Republican judge that ever stood up to the corruption in Massachusetts, and they attempted to strip his robe away for giving me a fair ruling. On that very day, I was in court. I was going to be arraigned and arrested on the charge that I beat up that attorney. And on 2 o'clock, when I didn't show up for court, Judge Coffey, another public defender that was involved in the Whitey Bulger scandal, ordered a bench warrant extrajudicially because I did not show up. But the day before, we removed the case to federal court, relieving all jurisdiction, and he ruled extrajudicially, and I have now a fugitive justice. The same day, at the same time, George Soros and Thomas O'Neill had 6 different judges in Massachusetts make rules, orders, and decisions to attempt to bankrupt the company at the same time, at the same place, and scheduled 6 other court appearances at the same time in 5 different courts. So I had a decision to make: show up in the court so I wouldn't be arrested and charged and held without bail for Christmas and killed in jail, save my house in one courtroom, save my business in another courtroom. And there were 4 other courthouses around Massachusetts that scheduled all the hearings at the same time and day. Nobody knew the day before I removed the cases to federal court and they lost jurisdiction. That did not stop the Soros-controlled judges from ruling against me. They have done this strategy over 24 times over the last year and a half, making me make decisions. Even as of yesterday, even as of today, I'm supposed to be in 5 different courthouses in Massachusetts, 3 different courthouses in Massachusetts at the same time and place, because the clerks and the judges don't give me notice until the day before and all schedule them. They take my mail. They evicted me out of my house 3.5 weeks ago. They robbed $2.5 million. I live in a $5 million house, well, $4 million house in Harwichport with $2.5 million in contents and a $50 million in company trade secrets, and they unlawfully evicted me out of my house. Here's what's going on, the abridged version. I am being prosecuted as though I'm running for president, and there is a political campaign going on. As you know, there are no rules, and no rules in Massachusetts apply to any of my adversaries because they rewrite the rules. And the judges, the cops, and the FBI, and the newspapers, up until yesterday, have all agreed that my story must not be told, and I will be killed or arrested on sight because what my story is and what I control, if it got out, would upset and start a civil war. Here comes Whitey Bulger.